I think the last one was probably 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No, so because, you know,
It's not one of those things
I just remember it happened.
It's not something I get this. I wouldn't drive this.
I'm quiet, not like 2, 3 o'clock. We're allowed to start late, but never early.
Sure.
Under public notice. Can't start them in early. Take this minute to get my glasses. All right, it's 3 o'clock. So let's call the meeting of the Monroe County Capital Improvement Board to order. And let me first point out with us today is Jace Harris, who is, Jim Whitlash is somewhere where he won't tell us where he is in the Caribbean, I think, floating around on something. So Jim's not with us in person. He's with us by Zoom. Jace is an attorney with the firm. He's been taking our minutes for us, but he's going to assist us as well in taking the roll call votes. We have to take roll call votes and everything since we have one of our members attending by Zoom. So Doug Bruce is also with us by Zoom. Doug is a bit under the weather today and thought he would not share that with us, so he would just be with us virtually. And I want to welcome Jay Bear to his first meeting in person with us. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you, sir.
Delight to have you here. So call to order, and I'll ask Jace if he would take the roll call, please.
John Whitehart,
Present.
Doug Bruce,
Doug, I think you're muted.
I was here.
Eric Spoonmore. Here. Joyce Pauling,
Here.
Jay Bear. Here. Adam Teese. Here. Jim Silverstein.
Here.
All right, thank you. All right, approval of the consent agenda. And let me mention that besides the consent agenda, which is simply the minutes of our last meeting, which have been circulated to you previously, I also sent out to you for your packet budget information that Jeff Underwood will present on later, as well as a draft RFQ for the hotel that we will talk about later. So with that, if we could have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is the minutes, in fact, from our last meeting.
Move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second? All right, so we have it moved and seconded. So again, Jace, if you would take the roll.
John Whitehart,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore.
Yes.
Joyce Pauling.
Yes.
Jay Bear.
Yes.
Adam Teese.
Yes.
Jim Silverstein.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3, treasurer's report. So I'll turn to Mr. Spoonmore.
I have not received any new claims, as of this time. I don't know if Mr. Underwood has we may want to give a report on what we've accrued at this point. Do you have that?
I do not have that, but we'll have it for the next meeting.
Okay. We still have some, legal, fees. We have, controller fees that, remain outstanding. We are going to be going to the city council on, Wednesday next week to present our budget. There'll be several of us there that will do that. And so that'll be kind of the next step in the process. One of the things that I think we need to get a little bit more clarity on is that there has been some changes to the state statute and even our local food and beverage tax ordinance amendments were made by the county council to bring that in alignment with the state statute. And we have a requirement well, prior to 2023, there was a requirement that the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission would have to be consulted for any expense of food and beverage tax dollars by either one of the legislative bodies. So that would be the city council or the county commissioners. So if they want to make use of those dollars, they have to get the approval of the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission, which has not met since 2020, by the way. Hasn't been a whole lot of need for that. The state law changed in 2023 where the approval is no longer required. But we do have to get their recommendation. It just doesn't, we don't have to have them approve any expense before it's appropriated by the city or the county. So I think what we need is some clarification, and hopefully we can get that on what the next step is in the process. Does the Capital Improvement Board need to go to the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission, or what we call as FABTAC? It doesn't really say any of that, and it doesn't name the Capital Improvement Board in the legislation or in the local ordinances. It just says the local legislative bodies, the city council or the county commissioners, need to do that. So we're kind of in a little bit of a conundrum there on what the process needs to be, but we want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we get this done as quickly as possible so that we can go to the city council to present this budget and have it approved as quickly as possible. And we don't want to miss any opportunities there. So, and I don't know if there's, anybody has a opinion on that.
Let me, if I may ask, and I don't want to put him on the spot, Jeff Cockrell, who's the county attorney, is here, so I'll put him on the spot and ask if he has any insight that he might share with us about this process.
Well, I think Spoonmore kind of gave the kind of broad overview picture. I just add that the county council's resolution in 2017, which founded the tax, included language that is almost carbon copy to that one, which is in the statute. I don't think that's been amended yet. But I think the plan, as far as I know, and I was on vacation last week, so is that we are going to try to get the city council to make a request to the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission next Wednesday. Hopefully schedule a meeting prior to April 3rd, maybe as early as later next week, so that they can give their recommendations and then the city council can review it again on April 3rd. I think April 3rd is the right date. I've got Tuesdays on my mind as far as council meetings, like, it's around there.
So
But that's kind of the time frame. I think I've been working with Stephen Lucas, which is the
Okay.
city council attorney, and that's kind of the timeline that we've been discussing. So I think that's probably the timeline we're looking at for this question ultimately.
So Mr. Cockrell, we would still plan to make a presentation to the city council next Wednesday, March 27th. So after that meeting, there would be a meeting of this board where the city council would take that request to that board and then have that board hopefully recommend support of that. And then it would come back to the city council the following Wednesday.
That would be my guess, but
Okay.
I would confirm that with Stephen
Sure.
Lucas to see how they want to handle those items on their agenda.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whitlash, do you have anything else to add to that? Any other insight or knowledge?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Just a point of information, since they haven't met in nearly 4 years, this body, FABTAC, is still existing and the members remain in force.
I think so. I think
Do they
well,
know they're in the committee?
there's 6 of them. as I know it now, I believe there's still one vacancy that has not been filled, but I may be wrong about that. I know that there was one vacancy that occurred a couple of years ago.
I believe that vacancy has been filled. I
Okay.
believe they have 7 members.
Okay, okay,
Some of them, if I may, some of the members are members by the fact they're elected officials.
Sure.
So for instance, the mayor, I believe, is a member, and, so some of the membership are by elected officials. So obviously some of that may have changed, but, as long as that board is willing to come together as quickly as possible after next Wednesday, if that can be scheduled the following Thursday or Friday, that would be terrific, so. Okay, thank you.
John, we've got a question for the city of Bloomington on the.
Who's asking?
City of Bloomington.
Who's there from the city of Bloomington? How do we,
I got a text from, I guess it says, the city staff is online for the CID meeting, but they can't chat or comment through.
we want to promote them to, channels.
Just needs to unmute.
she needs to unmute.
She should be there.
Margie, nobody's probably ever said this to you before, but please unmute.
You're hilarious.
Okay, are you seeking, permission to
Can
speak?
you- Well, I just wanted, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I did talk to Stephen Lucas this week, and he was trying to find a way to perhaps speed up the process between the city council and the FABTAC. So I definitely know that this is on his radar, and it's something he's trying to address.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, and we've drifted a bit because I know we were going to ask Jeff to present to us what he had presented to the city council for their consideration.
Okay, and as John said, the members were, we sent this out to the members, so we will be presenting to the city council next Wednesday evening with a request for $250,000. And we put the budget in the format that the city council is familiar with, which is a 4-category process. Category 1 is wages and benefits. Category 2 is supplies. Category 3 is services, and then category 4 is capital. So our breakdown was obviously 0 for personnel, as the CIB hasn't hired any employees at this point. We put $1,000 in for supplies for miscellaneous things that we may need to get over time. The brunt of it was $249,000 in services, and we broke that down to $130,000 for professional fees internal. That primarily would be Jim and myself. Professional fees external for other things that we might need to get, including site surveys and any other professional service that we might need, environmental, those kinds of things. $50,000 in architectural and design fees, $15,000 in insurance, and then $4,000 in other. That would be for things like if we want to develop and maintain a website. So those are some examples of what those may be and allow us to move forward as we continue to make decisions about the expansion.
So it does include Schmidt, but not owner's rep. Is that right?
Owner's rep is within one of those categories.
It is,
Professional fees external,
Okay, got it.
$50,000. So
Okay.
just again, I'll read down through those. $130,000 for professional fees internal, professional fees external, $50,000, which they would certainly fall underneath that. $50,000 for architectural and design fees, $15,000 for insurance, and $4,000 for other, for a total of $249,000, and then $0 in capital. So $249,000 in the category 3 and $1,000 in category 2 for a total of $250,000.
Thanks.
And let me remind the board, I know you don't need to be reminded, but the $250,000 isn't that we decided, we just want $250,000. That was what was in the appropriation in the 2024 budget. So we're simply asking them for them to allow us to spend what we're proposing within that appropriation that's already in their budget for this year.
Yes.
So any questions or comments about that? And let me remind everybody, please, please ask for recognition because Jason's trying to keep up and remember who's talking and who's saying what. So, Mr. Silverstein.
Is there any projection for 2024, how far that $249,000 will carry us?
Not at this time, since we're so early in the process, and as John said, we tied it to the amount that had been appropriated. Obviously, we or the city could go back for additional appropriations out of the food and beverage funds that are on hand. If we know that we need more money, we be able to do that.
Okay.
Anything else, Jim?
No, it just seems like we're probably gonna work through that pretty quickly, and it seems like the process for appropriation is pretty slow. And I just, it'd be a shame for us to find ourselves in a point where we're having to go back for money just to keep the project going.
Sure, and obviously, we'll be working on, as we get additional detail, we'll know. Eric and I plan, to look at this, what's been committed, get an idea of what we may need, and if we have additional funds, we will have to go back for our 2025 budget and present that to the city council yet this year as well, because the process is, in the past, I don't want to speak for the current administration, is the city council holds week-long hearings in August for presentations on the budget. I would assume that if they continue with that, we would be a part of those presentations. And then they adopt a formalized budget in September and October prior to that. They have to, typically by November 1st, have to have that submitted to the state. And that would be our.
So realistically, no matter what, we wouldn't have additional funds until 2025
No, we can ask for an additional appropriation.
in this year.
Yeah, this year, yes. And I know this, in the past, the city's done a year-end appropriation, but if we needed funds sooner than that, then we certainly could make that.
And we may want to consider, if we have to approach the FABTAC, the Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Committee in support of recommendations for dollars moving forward. If we have to do that anyway, following the city council meeting next week, we may want to, if time permits, ask for more than that 250,000, ask for their support for us to come back later for a greater appropriation than that $250,000. If we had that as a recommendation of support from them, then we wouldn't have to go back and do that part over again. So we'll see if that's the direction they would like for us to go.
And in the memo itself, we did say, we're tying this to what we know has been appropriated, but we may need additional funds, and we'd come back to the city and request those.
Mr. Barrett.
Statutorily, is an annualized process then? So this is the budget for this year. We have to go back when the year turns over unless there's an additional appropriation request.
That's correct. So annually, we would present our budget, and under the interlocal, it does not include the construction part of that, but what our operating expense for and get approval from the two
Because on the
bodies.
construction side, then we've got bonding capacity and several other
Right.
wickets. that have to be
Typically,
passed.
under a bond sale, and part of that ordinance is approval to appropriate the funds automatically and spend them without having to come back. But that will happen through the city.
Sure, because we've got a lot of requests and approvals, not only for this initial appropriation, but future appropriations down the road, some of which will be nuanced based on whether it's construction or bonded, et cetera. It might make sense for yourself and Jim or others involved, maybe even the owner's rep, when that becomes codified, to put together some kind of flow chart or triage for members of this body, we will look around the corner a little bit to say, here's what we're gonna need to do from an approval process. Because it feels like we talk a lot about who's got to approve what, and it should be great to have that sense of what that's going to look like as opposed to what it looks like in real time. And also just the number of different bodies involved in this, it'd be great to have that on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I would point out that as we reach that wonderful benchmark where we approved the interlocal agreement, we're at a point where now we're all trying to make sure we all understood what we agreed to. So as soon as we all understand that better, then I'd be more than happy for us to do a flow charting of all that kind of activity. So it's just working the bugs out.
I don't know if this is appropriate at this time, but
It's
I'm,
never stopped you before, Joe.
no, it hasn't, and it won't today. I also wish that we had an outline of the property that's being considered. I would like to know who owns it, how we would get hold of that, what process is involved. I would like to know any of the easements, encroachments, on that property. And again, if we have to have easements removed, now is the time to do it or changed. But I just feel like we're almost on this mysterious journey and that we need some more facts in front of us. I mean, we're going to be thinking about a hotel, but we don't know who, whose ownership, or do they want to sell it to us or them or whatever. And I just think that would be helpful for us, for the public, to understand the ownership of this quadrant or whatever we want to call it. And what's to be considered as we move forward.
Yeah.
So I'm out of order, but.
No, you're not.
Get
No,
used
you're recognizing issues that we're all discovering and recognizing and dealing with. We're, as we've often talked, we're still trying to discover what sites are even available to us
That's correct.
for expansion. So, yes, as we move down that road, we do need all that clarification. Completely agree. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Underwood? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Eric. The next item on the agenda is the recommendation for owner's representative, and Mr. Whitlash, I believe that you're going to talk to us about that process.
Yes,
Oh, I'm
that's correct. That's correct. We had a meeting we narrowed the list down to two owner representatives. That was Veritas Group and JS Held. And they were interviewed by Jeff Underwood, myself, and primarily the interviewing was done by three board members. That's Adam and Eric and Doug. And that was a week and a half or so ago. Jeff and I gathered information at that time, and we have talked, and we are making a recommendation that the owner's representative be JS Held, is the recommendation that we're making. And I would invite Jeff and the board members who are involved in those interviews to add any additional comments they may have, but our recommendation is JS Held.
Committee members board members, committee members who were involved in the process, comments?
I'll be happy to speak.
Mr. Teese?
Yes, I thought that both firms were very capable. I agree with the recommendation going forward. I cannot stress to this board enough how important this task is to move forward. We do not have a staff. Half of all of our problems, more than half, 90% of our problems moving right now is because we're all volunteers. We have got to get someone who owns this challenge every single day. And that is why this task is so important. It is so important. And I think the recommended firm will do a great job.
I would, this is Doug. I would agree with Adam completely. I thought both of the candidates offered each differing attributes for this position. I just felt that JS Held had maybe more local experience and quite a bit of experience, and just stood out a little bit above Veritas. So I agree with this recommendation as well.
Thank you. Mr. Spoonmore, comment?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to both of the firms that came to interview with us. Clearly, very reputable, excellent firms. They know their stuff. Tough decision, but agree with the recommendation, and looking forward to next steps in the process.
Mr. Bear?
To that end, what would be the presumed start date for JS Held at this project?
Well, what we would do, let's do this. Let's see if we have a motion to approve the recommendation, and then I would like to ask staff, if you will, to sit down then with JS Held, negotiate some agreement with them, bring that back to us at our meeting, which would include a start date, which I would hope would be by the 1st of May. So we would have them on board to help with the task. So before we get to that, let's let's see if we can get a motion on approving the recommendation first. So is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
I would move.
So Member Poland approved the recommendation, or a motion is moved. Recommendation is our second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bruce. So is there any further discussion on the motion? So,
Yes.
pardon me? Is there a discussion?
Yeah, just a quick question.
Question. Okay, Mr. Spoonmore.
So is the, if we approve the recommendation, is it, it's then contingent upon negotiating, the next steps in the process?
Correct.
Do we need to modify that motion in any way? Or
No, I think we've approved, as long as we approve, JS Held as our selection for owner's representative, and we approve that by vote. And following that vote, I'll appoint those who will sit down with
Yeah.
JS Held, to negotiate that agreement and come back to us at our meeting.
Understood.
All right, any other questions or discussion? If not, Jace, would you take the roll?
John Wycart,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Yes.
Joyce Bowling,
Yes.
Jay Bear,
Yes.
Adam Teese,
Yes.
Jim Silverstein.
Yes.
So the motion is approved. So what I would like to do, I would like to ask Mr. Whitlash and Mr. Underwood to meet with, I know Deb Kuntz is here, to meet with Deb Kuntz and put together an agreement with JS Held, much as we've done with our services for an attorney and for a controller, a letter of engagement, whatever that may look like, Mr. Whitlash, and include what those fees would be, and then report back to us in our April meeting, which is April 10th, which is 3 weeks from today. So 3 weeks from today, we can finalize that. And then we will have our owner's rep on board. That's, as Mr. Teese has pointed out, how critically important that is, that we get that done as quickly as possible so that we can have somebody who can represent us and do some of this work that we're all trying to do at this point as volunteers in this process.
There's a question up there.
Margie.
Yeah, is there a question from Margie? Are you asking a question? You want to be recognized?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to, see if we could put into the record the, Article 3, Section 2, Paragraph A of the interlocal agreement, so that we are clear about the role of the CIB, the building corp, just so because I know there are questions going forward about how things work. So I just want to make sure that at this meeting, while you're talking about a project manager, that you recognize the language in Article 3, Section 2A of the interlocal.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think we all recognize that. I don't believe it's an appropriate thing to add to this motion, and it's an appropriate thing for me to ask the staff to do, but certainly we'll all be aware of that, and thank you. Yeah, you all have copies of the interlocal, and but anyway, let's move on. Thank you, Margie. We've asked Mr. Whitlash and Mr. Underwood to meet with Deb Kuntz, put that together for us and bring it back 3 weeks from today. And then hopefully we will have secured our owner's representative. And I want to thank Paradis as well, who I know is here today. Thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it very much and your interest. So let's, if we go back to item number 4, which I skipped over, report on the interlocal agreement. Basically, that's only on the agenda for me to say what you already know, and that's that the interlocal agreement has been interlocally agreed to. So I think I mentioned that earlier, and that was the only thing I wanted to make sure we had in the minutes and on the record, that we know that was completed, and we reflected that in our minutes as well. So packet that I out to you, your review. Let me give you a little history and some background of how I bring this to you today. We've talked in past meetings about recognizing the urgency of moving forward in parallel paths as we think about the expansion of the convention center, that we also think about the importance of identifying a hotelier and moving forward with the hotel as well. so that in our process, we certainly have a hotel that is open at the same time the expansion for the convention center is open. And in fact, perhaps open slightly earlier. I'm not a hotelier, but I would think having the hotel open, soft openings, everything's working okay, and the convention center expansion's open, and we're all set to go. In addition, as those who are involved in this process in booking conventions moving forward, they certainly have to know what hotel is going to be available and dates of availability as they book conventions. So what I've proposed to you, and moving back in time, when we started this process in 2017, the only RFQ that was put out at that time in that process was an RFQ for a hotel. I asked Mr. Cockrell, county attorney, if he would send back to me the RFQ that we used in 2017, because it clearly identified what the need was and what we were looking for in a hotel in the expansion project. And he shared that RFQ with me. I asked Mr. Whitlash to review that RFQ. We took a look at it together, and we noted that in the original RFQ from 2017, we were asking hoteliers not only for their interest in building and constructing a new hotel, but actually in constructing and managing the convention center. Well, that was a thought in 2017 that is not a thought at this point in time. So we have revised that RFQ from 2017, taking out any references to constructing and operating a hotel. Missed one, sharp-eyed Mr. Teese caught it, and we revised it again and put it back out to you again, removing all of those references. I sent back to you as well the RFQs we used for both building owner and construction manager, and I think you will note that the RFQ for the hotel is much more detailed than the RFQs had been for the construction manager and the building owner. So we're rather specific in what we want from a hotel in terms of room sizes, conference rooms, other things. So what I'm asking you to consider is that we follow the same process we have used with construction manager and with an owner's representative. And we put out an RFQ to cast a net, if you will, to find out what hoteliers are interested in coming back to us and saying, here are our qualifications, and we do have interest in constructing a hotel that is part of the expansion of your conference center. So we would use the same process. We would put out this RFQ. We would get responses back. We would appoint a committee, and at this point, I would suggest we will be a committee of the whole to review those RFQs from hoteliers who are interested. Then we will follow the same track we were going to follow with the construction manager. And that is that when we have back the Schmidt rescoping report, and we are prepared to put out an RFP, a request for proposals, that we can put one out for a construction manager and the hoteliers at the same time, receive those back, review them, invite, just on the same track we are with the construction manager, invite those who respond with an RFP to interview with us, come back and make recommendations using that same process. So process is consistent. We're doing this the same way we have with the construction manager, the same way we have with the building owner representative. And so at this point, we're casting the net. My hope would be that if we follow the schedule proposed in the RFQ, that we will be on track to have that response back, that in May, and I'll jump ahead to architectural services. In May, we are anticipating the 1st of May, our rescoping report back from Schmidt. So by May, we can have our rescoping report back from Schmidt. We can have RFQs back for the hotel. We have RFQs back for construction manager. We can provide the information from the rescoping from Schmidt as part of the RFPs for hotel as well as construction manager. We can move that process forward perhaps in June, and perhaps as early as July, we would be prepared to come back and say, we have recommendations now on both construction manager and hotelier. So that's the It sounds like an ambitious schedule, but you know, we are trying to move this along as expediently as possible, knowing that the time is money. So what I'm asking for your consideration today is for approval of an RFQ for a hotelier that we can put out there to see what responses we get of interest from hoteliers, national hoteliers in our process, and then we will move forward as we are moving forward with our construction manager. So that is my request for your consideration today, and would invite your reactions, your comments, any questions you have. Mr. Teets.
I think it's a good idea to get this net cast for this topic of a hotel. The reality is that someone has to cultivate response. There is no ephemeral marketplace of hotel interested people in Bloomington, Indiana, who just kind of descend upon Bloomington and know that they want to do that. We're going to have to cultivate it. So that's why I think this owner's representative role, who quote unquote is our staff, is going to be so critical. I just hope the rest of the board understands that. You don't just put it out on a couple of websites and magically hotels just magically are happy to come to. There's going to have to be some cultivating and some work. And so I think it's good to put it out there, but I think I'm a little concerned with the dates that are in the RFQ, which I believe were in early April for about 3 weeks. I'm not sure how responsive the hoteling marketplace will be in a short 3-week window if they're not made known about this and they don't hear about it and they don't get outreach about it. They're not trolling city websites very often to get RFQs like this. So I think I'm really supportive of doing a casting a net. We need to build up the interest, but it's not as simple as putting out a document. So that
And if I may, and I completely agree, and I should have mentioned this, and I want to make 2 points. One, my excitement about bringing the owner's rep on board is that by as early as May, hopefully we have somebody involved with us in all of these processes, be it the hotelier, the construction manager, and all of that. Schmidt has already agreed they will assist us in terms of putting out an RFQ for the hotel. And Convergence, who works with Schmidt, who's involved in the hotel and convention business, will be involved with us in making certain that we're getting this RFQ out to the appropriate audiences. So I'm glad you made the point, and I failed to mention I hope through Schmidt and through Convergence that we have the ability to get this out to an appropriate audience. And we have the ability, if we don't think we got the kind of reaction we wanted from it, that we can always put it back out again. We don't have to respond at all by the end of April. If we don't get the kind of response we were hoping for, we just extend that period of time. Any other questions or comments?
And just to follow up on that last point, Mr. Chairman, if we don't get the response that we hope for or anticipate, partially maybe because of the premises that Adam lays out, we won't have owner's representative by that time. Obviously, Schmidt will help and Convergence will help. Does that create an optics challenge for the project if we extend it or put it back out a second time? And I don't think anybody has an answer to that, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think the RFQ makes clear that the schedule's tentative, that we have the ability at any time to extend, to continue. It would not be, I don't want to say it wouldn't be unusual, perhaps I would think it would not be unusual to certainly say, we have these responses, we want to continue the search.
Yeah.
So these responses are in the search, but we are going to continue the search. We're going to extend the period of time for other responses to the RFQ. So I don't think we're going to be locked in, but I'm hopeful, and I recall talking with Mr. Geisel from Convergence, who said that he suspects we will have great interest in this project. So I'm counting on Schmidt and Convergence to assist us in terms of making sure the right people are aware of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Great.
Mr. Silverstein.
I have a question. Since we're at the RFQ stage and not the RFP stage, are we looking for a small group of proposal or qualified hoteliers to submit the RFP? Or are we just looking for a single qualified entity to submit the RFP.
I will, let me leap ahead. The process we're using for the construction manager, and we had, if I recall correctly, 6 responses to the construction manager. Is that?
Yes, that's my recollection.
So those were the responses to the RFQs. We have not gotten to the point yet of saying, of you respondents, we're inviting you to the next step of the RFP process and the interview process. And that would be the same consistent approach we would take with the hoteliers, that in a wonderful world, let's say we got 6 responses from nationally recognized, wonderful convention and conference center hotels as a result of the RFQ. Then when we were prepared to put the RFP out, we would have decided, again, I'm leaping ahead, but a committee of the whole, we would have reviewed that and said, out of these 6, we're inviting all 6 of you or 4 of you or whatever that number is. Here's our RFP process. We ask that you respond to that, and we will invite you then for interviews after you've responded to that.
Okay, and then just, there's a typo in the RFQ.
Adam didn't find it.
So, somebody needs to fix that.
What is it?
It's down here under specifically with regard to the hotel. Hotel with includes, it should be which includes.
Tell me where you are.
I'm on the first page. Second to last paragraph. Specifically with regard to the hotel, last line there, hotel with includes, it should be which includes.
I'm sorry, tell me again so I can find it.
First page,
First page.
yep, of the RFQ,
Uh-huh.
second to last paragraph.
Specifically with regard to the hotel.
It says, yeah, exactly. And that third line there, after hotel, it should say with or which instead of with.
Okay, which?
Yeah. And then more importantly, since we're talking about specifics with this, RFQ, and I know that the, interlocal agreement, refers to sustainability. Do we want to be certain that that these proposals, have something to do with LEED certification? That they're aware that we're going to be, seeking some kind of LEED certification on the hotel? Or is that not something that we can request here?
Well, we can, but I think somebody jump in if they want to help. But I think in the RFP process, when we get to the request for proposals, we're going to be much more specific about what we expect them to react to.
Yeah,
And
so that would be the stage when that happens.
yeah, I would think that would be the stage. That's acceptable. I think that's when we would see those kinds of specifics.
Yeah, I guess we just wouldn't want to bring it on somebody who went through the RFQ
Right.
process and then say in the RFP, oh, by the way, this has to be, if that's what we're looking for,
Yeah,
LEED certification,
I
silver,
think in the
gold, whatever.
RFQ process, I think what we're going to see, and I don't mean to diminish it, is we're going to see interested hotels who are going to pull up their qualifications that they submit to projects, and they're going to send them to us.
Right.
And they're going to say, we're signaling you that we're interested, and here are our qualifications. By the time we get to the RFP process, having worked with Schmidt and with an owner's representative, we will have had the ability through the owner's rep to develop a very specific RFP that we will put out that will include those details.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? All right, Mr. Spoonmore.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Schmidt and Convergence is gonna be assisting with this process, but just to, verify, so they have seen this document and Schmidt has seen this document, or are they?
They have
good with
not.
it?
No, they have not.
Okay.
They've only indicated that they would be involved and would certainly be involved in the process of helping us if we get to this step, that they would be involved in helping us get these RFQs out, get
Okay.
this RFQ out.
Okay.
But they have not, no, they have not seen it.
Okay.
You've seen it, they have not.
Yeah.
All right, I would like to ask if there is a motion, a motion to approve the RFQ and then we get the RFQ out.
So moved.
Second.
Did you get that? So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right,
John Wyckoff,
Yes.
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Associates and ask them for their assistance in the proper circulation. We'll notify Mr. Whitlash, I'm sure will notify all the appropriate folks locally, and we'll get this out as we get these things out. So thank you. All right, the architectural services update. I've already mentioned that Schmidt has agreed to move forward, getting us our rescoping report by the 1st of May, understanding that we are still waiting on approval of funding to pay them for their services. So they've agreed to go ahead and move forward to prepare that for us. Their goal is to have that for us by the 1st of May, so that we're looking at our, I believe our May meeting is May 8th, so that we would have that to look at, that rescoping of that report on at our May 8th meeting. So that's the update on architectural services. All right, we're to item 8, unless I skipped anything else. Old business. Anybody have any old business to bring before the board? New business before the board?
I think I'll just, on new business, just reemphasize, what Joyce had asked about at some point having some kind of a property, update and some codification around what we're dealing with from a real estate standpoint. It's gonna be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. Comments from board members? Other comments from board members? Mr. Teese?
I'd like to take a moment and say thank you to all of your hard work and extra hours. We're all volunteering, and you've been putting in a lot of hours. And I think that's one of the problems. That's one of the frustrations, is that we're all volunteers.
The chair agrees.
And this project will not happen with volunteers, folks. We're building a significant structure, tens of millions of dollars, and it has to become professionalized quickly. Every month that waits, we lose significant money. I hope the community, the leaders, whoever you are out there, understand that. This is not, it doesn't mean the same thing a year from now that it will mean today. It doesn't mean the same thing 3 years from now that it will mean today. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I know you personally are doing a lot of the homework here. Other members, if you've been doing homework, great. But we have got to get serious about this project. And serious means daily work, daily work. It's not work that happens through volunteer committees. So I hope no one is giving each other high fives that there's been a CIB created. That's like touching the 5% top of an iceberg, where 90% is below the water. I mean, the real work has not even started. But I wanted to say thank you for your help.
I mentioned to my wife that it seemed like I was putting a lot of time in on this, and she said she was grateful for that. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Spoon.
Well, I share Mr. Tease's sense of urgency as well. There are some very important questions that remain for us before we can start to even scratch the surface on making the meaningful progress that I know the community wants to see on this convention center as it relates to the construction of it. We don't even, we're still uncertain what properties are available for us. We've got to have conversations with, the redevelopment commission. And so I think that's going to be very important. That's a very urgent situation, because we can't really make any decisions and direct architects and so forth, or owners representatives to do work if we don't even know where we're putting the things. So I think what we just need some answers. And that's the most important thing. And, funding. And so once we can, get this squared away with the city council, we know the wheels of government turn slow. It certainly has for this convention center. We've been talking about it for 30 years. Here we are. I do feel like we have, and then kind of going back to some remarks that Mr. Whitehart made in previous meetings, we have made some pretty substantial progress, considering the lack of progress that we have seen over the last couple of decades with this conversation in the community, but I certainly agree with Mr. Tees. We've got to get some answers to these very important questions. We want to be the best partners we can to both city and county government. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I get a lot of questions from the appointing body, from the county council that appointed me to this role. And it's hard for me to answer those questions when I don't have answers to them. And so, you know, if they're confused about some of the next steps in the process, I know that there must be others. And so hopefully we can all just kind of come together and really get this thing moving, get the answers that we need to make that meaningful progress.
Thank you. Mr. Bear.
Well, I guess I will ask the obvious follow-up question, which is if we don't have the answers, who is responsible for providing them? Right? Is it, I mean, if we all have agreed with there's answers we don't have, I think no debate on that. So do we wait until we have an owner's representative and at that point they are the lead sled dog in creating these answers that we so richly need? I'm just not quite sure how that gap gets filled, to your point about you can't even report back to your appointing body because you don't know the answer. And here we are in a meeting, but we don't have the answers. And so I just want to know who's responsible for creating the answers.
Well, I think ideally the interlocal agreement would settle some of that, but I think there's different interpretations of the agreement. And so once we can come to a consensus on what that means, then that should help us guide the way.
Yeah, and I would agree. The owner's rep, the role of the owner's rep isn't to go to the parties in the interlocal agreement and ask them to clarify our questions. And I don't think we should be overly surprised that now that we're into the implementation stage of the interlocal agreement, the questions are arising. And we're going to need to go back to the sources and say, help us understand the answers to these questions. So I don't think that's unduly surprising. We'll get the answers to these questions. It's what's important right now is developing the full set of them so that we can go back to those who have made these agreements and say, these are the questions that we have, provide us the clarification that we need. So, and say, there's an optimist where there's life, there's hope. So we're still moving forward, and we will get the answers to these questions.
And thanks so much to county staff and city staff joining this meeting today. I think it's going to be really important and helpful going forward that we have those resources available to us as the capital improvement board to get answers when questions do come up as we're going forward. So appreciate that.
And I would also add that we sit here, although I never think about it when we're meeting, but we do sit here as people appointed by various partners in the interlocal agreement in the county ordinance. So I think it's also always helpful for us to remember we can always contact those who appointed us and say, here's some things we're dealing with, just want to make you aware of it as we're seeking answers to certain questions, and hopefully that will spur quicker answers to.
I love your point about let's try and get all the questions at one time so in order to get them answered piecemeal. I think that's incredibly wise. Would it be prudent then to put a flag in the ground metaphorically and say, let's figure out the appropriate mixture of people in this room or virtually, et cetera, to say, we want to provide for ourselves and for relevant bodies what we believe to be the current list of questions by our next meeting or the meeting after that, and sort of say, okay, we're going to work towards that development of this master list of questions. That way we've got something to shoot at in a database we've committed to.
I think, yeah, that's helpful. I will tell you that we are moving forward to have conversations with the various parties to say, here are questions we need to answer. So we are moving forward with that right now. Hopefully by the time we get to a next meeting, we will have already answered a lot of these questions. So that is already in process. Other comments from board members? comments from the public? All right, next meeting, April 10th at 3 p.m. I tell you, I looked at my calendar very quickly this morning to determine, hopefully we are not meeting during the eclipse. We are not. So, well, that's not to say it won't become dark. but we are, our next meeting is April 10th, Wednesday, 3 p.m. in this room. And with that, item 13, we are adjourned. Thank you very much to everyone.